What's up, everybody? Let's talk metal. Specifically, since I've already talked true metallic metal, which is talking paint, I'm going to be talking in this case the technique known as non-metallic metal. So I won't try to get too bogged down in talking about true metallic metal. I'll just reference the video if I have to, so be sure to check that out. But non-metallic metal is a way to do metallic painting if you so desire that incorporates no metal paint whatsoever, hence the name non-metallic metal. This is not a tutorial, I'm not an expert, this is just meant to be something of a resource and maybe spark some conversation. So with that said, I'm going to dive into what it is, what I call the 3 tiers of non-metallic metal. And from there, just some things to consider and some thoughts overall. So it should be fun. So what the heck is non-metallic metal? Well, it's an advanced technique, but don't let that scare you away. Even if you're a brand new painter, as long as you are aware that it's going to be a much steeper hill to climb, tackle it if you want to. That's all I'll say about that. But non-metallic metal is a technique, and it's a technique of tricking the eye. The end result is something that your eye, and therefore your brain, interpret as being a metallic finish without using any metallic paint. No metallic flake is in there, so it tends to be as smooth as silk when you're done. There's no worry about rogue sheen or rogue luster that you get with metallic flake. And what I mean by that is you can highlight and shade metals, but when light hits a metallic paint job with true metallic metal paint, it's going to have that sheen to it because it's got reflective flake or powder in there. So none of that to worry about in non-metallic metal. You are literally putting the sheen, putting the shadow where you want it. And you do this with standard paint. So it's an illusion. Some people prefer this look, particularly if the metallic is an ornate accent piece. They prefer this because they like the Christmas, that it kind of blends well with the Christmas of the regular colors. That sometimes metallic paint is a little jarring for people, I suppose. A lot of people do this for the rule that always is at the forefront, the rule of cool. And that'll be a video for another time. But the rule of cool is definitely in effect with non-metallic metal, and it is cool. It's not necessarily better or superior to true metallic metal painting. It's just a different way to do it, and it's a cool look. So, with that being said, it's a technique. It's apples and oranges when you're talking about it versus true metallic metal. The true metallic metal is just a paint that you use, or a series of paints you use, in whatever technique you paint as. Whether it's thinning it down, whether it's dry brushing, whatever it is. Non-metallic metal, that is the technique. The paints are important, but they also don't really matter in the sense of, depending upon the recipe, paints will vary. The other thing is, you pick a recipe based on the end result that you see. Like, this recipe yields this result. This is a cool gold. It's a yellower gold, or a browner gold, or warmer gold, or cooler gold, or warmer silver, whatever that you like. Okay, well, to do this formula, to do this technique, this is the recipe of paints. Now, let's say it's using Reaper paints, but you paint with Armored Painter or Citadel or Vallejo. You don't have to buy the Reaper paints. You could. You could also just interpret it and extrapolate it to your paint range. So instead of it being yellow ochre, you might want bad moon yellow. I don't know, I'm making stuff up. Whatever the equivalent color is for your paint range, you would just do that instead of the colors that they used, because it's more so about the technique in applying said coloration. So, with that understood, trust the process. Even if you're a bit of a veteran painter in general, but this is your first foray into non-metallic metal, don't freestyle, don't ad-lib. Just follow the process from start to finish. Get a sense of it, get some confidence with it before you decide to freestyle a bit, especially if you're a newer painter. I say trust the process because somewhat early on, even all the way through halfway and beyond, you might look at your model and think, what have I done? This looks awful. This is a mistake. Trust the process throughout it. The end result will be what you're looking for. It won't be what the quote-unquote pro painters show it as necessarily, but it's not going to be a train wreck necessarily, and you're just going to get better with time, so trust that process. This is the same thing with object source lighting and power sort effects and crackling, anything like that. Trust the process, because it's going to feel like it's a mistake partway in. So with that said, now that we're trusting the process, there are 3 levels to non-metallic metal. It's not that 1 becomes 2 and 2 can become 3. It's just the 3 levels of tackling it. Level 1, or the first level, is subdued. It's kind of subtle non-metallic metal. This is typically done for irons and steels, dingy armor, battle-worn stuff, even grimdark. If you're going for a weathered effect for the rest of your force, this would be the non-metallic metal level to go with. Because being that it is a technique itself, it doesn't necessarily play that well with other techniques. Because it's super stylized in its highlights and its shades and everything else to give the illusion to then weather on top of it, whatever else, doesn't... I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it doesn't tend to work out the way you might want it to. But with the subdued, subtle one, it's pretty dang close to being able to do just that, because you can make it as dingy and as dark as you want. Typically done for irons and stuff, in which case you could confuse it for just being a gray, but it's just the way it is. It feels like it's almost metallic, and that's the idea. The second level to talk about is stylized, kind of your standard non-metallic metal. When you think non-metallic metal and you do an image search, this is what you'd see for the most part. You'd see some level 3s for sure, but this is what you would definitely see the bulk of. The Sanguinor from GW is done in non-metallic metal on their product page, and I'll list it as a level 2, kind of a stylized, standardized non-metallic metal to good effect. There are gradients throughout these, but that's generally what I'm talking about. It's definitely non-metallic metal. It's definitely a bit stylized, but it's not subdued and subtle. You look at it and go, yep, that's it. But it's no level 3, which is super extreme stylization. The best example, not the only thing, but the best example to talk about is Sky Earth non-metallic metal, also known as chrome. The reason it's called this is it's mimicking polished chrome. So if you've ever been to a car show or a motorcycle show with show vehicles where they're all polished up and they have a lot of chrome accenting and you can see yourself in it, that's the effect of Sky Earth non-metallic metal, called so because to mimic the reflection, they paint a bit of a sky and a bit of earth tone stuff on the non-metallic metal armor to not just showcase that it's non-metallic metal, but also that it's highly reflective. Typically not done as an army, although I'm sure there's some insane person out there who has. But it's typically done just for stylization to look really cool for a contest or just make a really cool model. I've seen it on Tau, I've seen it on Space Marines. You could see it on Necrons-ish, maybe, depending upon the model. But very difficult, in my opinion, wrapping my head around it anyway. It's an advanced technique in general, and the Ghost Sky Earth is a bit higher. But really cool results. And that's purely for rule of cool, I would say. But all 3 levels are neat. And all 3 levels, really, you have to incorporate the idea of how you do a reflection or shading and highlighting and whatever else. Rule of cool is a big reason you see a lot of this. I know I mentioned this already, but it can't be understated, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes painting your models and your collecting, you try to give reasons for why you did something to try to make it sound more legitimate at times, outside of just going, I thought it was cool. But I thought it was cool is plenty enough reason. So one thing to keep in mind is that the more ornate the model, the bigger headache it is for non-metallic metal in general, because there's a lot more details and a lot more recess of the shade and highlights you do up. Depending on the angle and the shape of the model and the shape of the ornateness, it might almost be inverted in the shading and highlighting or the reflection. So take your time, do your research if you have to for how metal would react and for what you're trying to achieve if you're doing a particularly in-depth model. I have seen, I don't know if I'll be able to find pictures, but I have seen non-metallic metal done on vehicles like rhinos and stuff. It's a bit of a different beast. It can be a little jarring to look at because it's just, wow, that's a lot of flat surface. But it is plausible, potentially, and a surface like that benefits from Sky Earth, but also becomes a nightmare because of all the different angles. But it helps out a little bit. But anyways, saying a lot of stuff here. The point is that vehicles are definitely in the minority. Typically, you just see this stuff on infantry or robots or whatever, and dreadnoughts. But the larger, flatter surface stuff like rhinos and land raiders and stuff can be done. It just tends to be a little bit of a uphill climb to wrap your head around, and you don't see it very, very often. And for me, I can't wrap my head around it. But if you've done it, share it. Maybe it's a lot easier than I think, but it just seems like it wouldn't be given the larger flat surfaces. The curvedness of armor and the shape of a sword and stuff, I think lends itself a lot better to non-metallic metal than a large flat surface like a rhino. So keep in mind, if you're doing Sky Earth non-metallic metal and you're doing the reflection as a desert reflection, don't base it on a lava base, right? And because of the level of non-metallic metal and the level of polish, pun intended, but like basically the level of crispness and just silky smoothness the paint job is going to be, it demands a higher caliber of hair, flesh tone, cloth, wings, whatever. So you have to kind of elevate your paint game around the entirety, not just the metallic side here, but if you're doing it as ornateness around something, then what it's around needs to be kind of elevated and have that level of highlights and shading done to it as well. So your blue needs to have more than just a shade in the recesses and one highlight, but it's got to be several stages or wet blended or whatever the case is. Same thing, it's not just non-metallic metal. It needs to be to this caliber. The rest of the model, whatever is done in standard paint ranges, needs to also kind of be put up there. Just another food for thought. In any case, non-metallic metal is very cool. Detail brushes, clean water, thinning your paints, taking your time, trusting the process, and practice and understanding that it's going to take a bit to get used to it, and everywhere else is going to go far for you. So just don't be afraid of it. And the newer painter, or the less experience you have as a painter, the more you have to just trust it, and the more you have to understand it's going to be a bigger uphill climb. But it definitely looks cool. I definitely like it. Custodes is heavily ornate armor, but when it's done on them, it looks really good. I think your standard Mark 7 armor, Mark 10 armor type stuff, your standard type of, knightly stuff and fantasy armies, things that aren't that ornate, but they have the curved surfaces and the flow. I think they're some of the best stuff to practice on, because you don't have to worry about fluted armor. You don't have to worry about extra detail stuff to then go, okay, raise, hill, valley, hill, valley, hill, valley, and then extra ornateness everywhere else. If it's just base armor, that is sometimes the best way to learn. And then you just, as you get comfortable with it, you can add in more ornateness and do it to more ornate stuff. But that's just my personal take on it. For you non-metallic metal painters out there, share your non-metallic metal thoughts. How long did it take you to get comfortable with it? What color do you really like doing as non-metallic metal? Because you can do your silvers, your golds, your coppers, your bronze, right? Share it all in the comment section down below, and let's get a discussion going. And looks cool, rule of cool. If you don't really know what rule of cool means, although it's pretty self-explanatory, there will be a video on that coming, so stay tuned. In any case, thanks so much for tuning in and stopping by, and until next time, take it easy.